Welcome back to the table. Today, Emily and I are going to be taking a look and giving you a preview of Trolls and Princesses. This is the newest one from Game Brewer. It's coming to Kickstarter very soon, if not already. This is a worker placement game.
Yes.
But Emily and I talked about whether or not it was worker placement, which it is. I think
it is definitely
agreed.
worker placement. It's troll placement.
Troll placement. Well, there's humans too that you kind of place.
So I guess workers.
But what we're getting at is the fact that you're actually moving them around. You're going to be placing your workers in different spaces, both on your player board and into the main board, but then moving them around because when you take the action of those spaces, and by action I mean actions, because there's plenty of actions to take.
Many actions to take.
You're going to be looking at sort of the strength or the power of your trolls and maybe some of the humans that you've hired in that area to determine all the things that you can do.
Yes.
All of this is to capture princesses, but in game terms, to score points. And capturing princesses is going to be one way of doing that. But you're also going to be sort of collecting things from the main board and sort of trading them with your player board. There's these outposts that are all going to start out as neutral. Those outposts are things you're going to have presence in these villages that'll sort of artificially enhance your strength there. You're going to have these church bells, which are effectively just abstract things you're going to be taking from the board, stealing them from the churches, and placing them in your play space. And then finally, these changelings. There's neutral changelings, and then you have troll changelings. And I assume this is thematically, you're sort
changing them out,
supplanting the human population out here in the villages with your trolls and getting them back onto your player board. Because your player board has a few spaces for those at the beginning of the game. Mm-hmm. But you have to kind of expand your player board in a number of different ways by removing some of those pieces that we were talking about, but also building this giant cave network.
Yep. But before we talk about any of those actions, I think we should say what we do on a turn specifically,
right?
For
sure.
So on a turn, we're going to reveal the next card that we have in our hand. At any time, you always have one card in your hand, and that's the card you're going to reveal. At the top, it has you seeding something onto the board. So like my first one has me seeding a princess onto the first village. So I would put a princess right up there in the first village, and that's something we can now take to get for points and stuff. And at the bottom, it tells me where the Troll King is going to go. So the Troll King is also presence. Wherever he goes, it might be on my personal board or it might be one of the villages. Now, if I take actions there, I have an extra presence there to do things.
Yeah, the Troll King is kind of interesting because when we first read the rules, we were thinking, oh, so he's going to go and you're going to want to utilize him, which is true.
Yes.
But is really opportunistic because you might have plans to do something. And then at the end of your turn, you flip over your next card so that you can kind of plan for the next card. And you'll see the Troll King going in maybe a completely different place than what you wanted to do. So it is one of those kind of interesting decisions because you're like, well, I wanted to do this, but should I take advantage of the Troll King being in this place instead? And the good news is you might be able to do both. Because after you resolve that card, you're going to move one of your trolls and take an action.
Yep.
But then you're going to move another one of your trolls.
And take another
action. So you are potentially able to build on both of those things. Mm-hmm. And like I said earlier, you're going to have eventually all your trolls combined either on your player board or out among the villages. They're not going to be off the player board, even though that's where they start. Mm-hmm. Once they're on any of these boards, that's where they are until you move them around onto different spaces. But once you have enough trolls in one space, you're going to take an action. And in fact, you could take an action with just one troll.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's not going to be a lot of action.
And sometimes you have to, just to move things around in the right way. But yes, when you get a whole mass of trolls in one spot, you're going to have a lot more you can do in a spot. Because they have different actions for the number of action points you can do.
Yeah, the village places on the board have a laundry list, which we'll get to in a second. But you have 3 different caverns on your player board. They're going to give you a variety of different things you can do thematically for that cav. There's one that you can mine, and you're going to be able to collect resources that you've kind of put out in your cave network. Yep. We'll talk a little bit more about the cave network in a second. There's a section here where you can build things. This is the main area where you're going to be sort of interacting with the board, putting some of these outposts on there, getting more cave tiles for your cave network, those sorts of things, spending those resources that you've collected. Yes. And then you've got the Troll Power Cavern. This is where you're going to repopulate the resources in your cave network, but then also get some of these troll cards that allow you some spaces for some of those changelings, as well as maybe some resources, some bonuses, and even
some
end of game
cool
scoring.
actions, too.
Yes, some very cool actions for sure.
And then at the bottom of each of them too, there's an option to do a royal power, right? A king's power. And you start out with 1, which is that you're able to move one of your trolls to a different location, which is very helpful, especially if you're trying to build up to a bigger turn. You take a smaller turn, at the end of it, you move a troll, and now your next turn, you have a bunch of people in one spot ready to go.
Yeah, it's huge because that is at the bottom of every one of those caverns, and you'll find yourself spending points because the way it works is when you're taking your action, say in the building cavern, you're going to look at how many trolls you have there, how many humans you have there, along with whether or not the troll king is there.
Yep.
Add those all up, and those are effectively the action points you have to spend here. And you can see in the picture I'm showing right here now, there's a list of options that you can do. It's going to cost 1 cow and 3 action points to build an outpost, where it costs 1 obsidian and 2 action points to take 2 cave tiles and put them in your cave network.
Or you could spend 1 action point to just refill and take new caverns. So then you might get a better one, and then you spend another 2 points to take 2 more into your network, and it kind of goes along like that.
And cycling those things, those tiles
and the cards
is a very important part of the game. In fact, you're going to want to dig down through there and get certain things to really kind of benefit what you're trying to do. But then, like we said, that last action in every space lets you move one of your trolls. And this is going to be cool. And you can do that just once in that action space. And they do definitely want to limit that because after you take your actions, you might spend that leftover action point to move a troll, maybe from that space, maybe another space, into the other space that you're going to use that turn so that you can kind of get a little strength there. Or maybe it's your second turn and you do this to sort of set up your next round and your next turn by getting maybe some trolls out here. There's a lot of interesting things you can do. And in fact, some of the king's tiles that you get will let you move maybe 2 trolls or 1 troll and 1 of your humans that you've collected from the board. And those will really let you set up your next turn significantly. So you're not just placing workers, taking your actions, and not really thinking ahead. This game definitely has you thinking ahead and trying to position your workers such that your next action that you want to take is as good as you want it to be.
Which makes sense too, because on the board there are also 2 village spots you can take, and those are even more interesting because it's not just your own workers that count there, it's also the other trolls from the other players that are going to give presents. So at the top it shows 3 different actions you can take that are not just based on your own color, but are also based on trolls from anybody else. And then at the bottom there are some actions you can take that are just based on your own troll color, which can include your trolls, your outposts that are out there, and also the Troll King. So you have quite a few ways to get quite a few points in here, but they are more expensive for sure. So like the biggest thing you can do is take a princess.
Yeah.
In order to do that, you have to have 5 troll points to spend, 2 troll power, a diamond, and you also have to have a place for her to sleep in your cave network somewhere. So you have to have a princess bed somewhere in your cave network. So that's kind of the big thing to do, but she is worth 7 points at the end. And she gives you 1 of the king's tiles to put in your cave network as well.
Yeah, and all those things are really important. Like we kind of glossed over this, but the getting of things is one thing. The having the place to put those things is another thing in particular. From princesses to the changelings to the outposts, you have to make sure there's places to put those or you can't take that action.
Yes.
Each player starts with some player-specific outposts on their board, and these are going to be things that you trade. When you take a neutral, you replace it with yours. Now, your neutral can't go to exactly where you picked this one up, though. You have to have another place for it. And once you've filled the original spot, you have to have either a cave tile or potentially one of the troll cards to place these things. And usually those will also give you some bonuses.
Yeah, so you're wanting to go for them anyway.
Yeah, it's really nice. But this is definitely a game where you're going to have things going back and forth, and it's just as important to build up what you've got going on here. And in fact, not just important, but interconnected with all the things that you're trying to do out on the main board.
Yeah. And I think the one thing we haven't talked about is the King's cards, which are kind of like public objectives everyone's trying to go for. And those are a big way you can get those King Cavern tiles, which are huge.
Yeah.
3 points each, but they're also really cool actions you can take throughout the game. But in order to do them, you have to do these objectives. So they might be like place out 3 of your outposts, or get 3 endgame scoring tiles, or get 1 of each type of card. And they're all different depending on which game you're playing. They come out in a variable different way. But it is like everyone's looking around the table being like, can I get to that because I want my king's tile? And that really helped me get an engine going a lot faster if I can get there quickly.
Yeah, after our plays, getting those king's tiles became pretty clear that it's a big part of the engine building of the game, because like we said, those little leftover actions you can use to use a king's tile if you have action points, those become very, very good if you have some really good powers. And sometimes some of those tiles will flip and you're like, whoa, that seems very powerful.
Yes.
I mean, allowing you to just get a card or get another tile or just do things that would take a few steps otherwise.
Yes, exactly. Or cost a bit otherwise, and now you're just getting for very little, for very cheap.
Yeah, and these are big stacks too, so the variability of playing this, you're going to see a lot of different tiles come up. And speaking of variability, there's also a few things that just during setup, each player board is slightly different. You're going to start with a different number of resources, and it's actually significantly different. We actually looked at all the player resource setups and thought, wait, that must be equal. I'm getting 4 gold and 1 troll power. You're getting X number of obsidian and a diamond and some troll power.
Someone got a human to start with, which is kind of crazy.
It was really interesting. And then also the last point of variability is these castle tiles. There's some castles in each of the villages. And there's, by the way, 1 village per player. So the board is set up for a 2-player game right now. But those castle tiles are one of the actions you can take when you go to the village. And every game, it could be something different. I can't remember how many there are, but like 10 to 12 different castle tiles.
Yeah, quite a few.
In this one, you could get 2 cows, or over here, you could get 2 obsidian. And otherwise, to get cows, you're taking a full action and spending 1 action point there to get 1 cow. So to be able to take the castle action and get 2 cows is pretty significant. Not to mention, the castle actions allow you to pull all of your trolls back from that location. So if you've dumped a bunch of trolls there to do maybe that princess action, then you're able to take that castle action and boom, take all your trolls back and put them wherever you want on your player board, which is very powerful. That allows you to set up like maybe not just your next turn, but maybe your next couple turns.
Yep. And so we keep doing this. The game ends after 10 to 12 rounds, depending on how many players are playing. And once you're done, you score up points. So we're going to get points for each set of bells and changeling and outposts. So each set of 3.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get points for princesses, for humans. There are some endgame points in the cards and some endgame points in the tiles.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's kind of quite a few different ways to get points throughout the game. Like what you're doing is probably going to get you points. But it does take, like Dave was saying, a lot of planning and thought into how you're going to manage all these resources.
Yeah, and that's the last thing I'll say. This game is a thinky game. There's a lot of things you can do. Like we said, this village action with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So many.
6 different actions you can take at the village, and then I guess 5 different actions you can take in each of the caverns. So, and you're spending these points. So even just keeping track of like how many actions have I taken, how many points do I have left. Sometimes you can do a lot of things on your turn, and you're kind of mapping out like, okay, I'm going to spend 2 of them to do this, 2 of them to do this. Oh, I have 1 left over. I guess I'll do that.
And then Dave would be like, okay, so that was my first move. And I was like, okay, you have a whole nother one. Here we go.
And typically, though, you're not going to generally have 1 massive move and then another massive move right away. But you can typically feel like every round
you're doing something big.
Likely to have at least 1 big troll placement with a lot of actions going on. So anyway, that is Trolls and Princesses from Game Brewer. If you have any questions at all, please make them in the comments below and we'll answer whatever we can. Until next time, of course, make sure everyone has fun at the table, though, and we'll see you then.